You ever have one of those neighborhoods that looks perfect from the outside, neatly trimmed hedges, smiling faces, HOA signs promising community harmony, but behind that perfect picture lies something rotten? That's where we lived. My name's Mark Lewis, and until that day, I thought I'd seen it all. I'm a middle-aged guy, an electrician by trade, a father of one beautiful teenage daughter, Emily, and husband to a woman who's been through hell and back with me, Lisa. We'd moved to Oakwood Estates 3 years earlier, chasing that picture-perfect American dream, quiet streets, safe environment, neighbors who supposedly looked out for each other. Turns out, looked out meant spied on. And the worst of them all was the woman everyone called Karen. Her actual name was Linda Harris, but believe me, the nickname fit like a glove. From day one, she treated the HOA like her personal kingdom. Every mailbox had to be painted exactly the same shade of beige, no basketball hoops allowed, no kids playing music outside after 6 p.m. She ran the place like a dictator in yoga pants. I'd had my fair share of run-ins with her, little things like her complaining about our Christmas lights being too bright, or that our lawn was 2 inches above regulation height. But Lisa always calmed me down, said, "Let it go, Mark. People like her thrive on reactions." So, I did. Until that day when she crossed a line I'll never forgive her for, the day she touched my daughter. It was a hot Saturday afternoon in June, the kind where the air feels heavy and even the birds hide in the shade. I was in the garage fixing a broken fan when I heard shouting outside. At first, I thought it was just kids arguing, but then I recognized that shrill, nasal tone I'd know anywhere, Karen. She was yelling about unauthorized construction, and my stomach dropped. I stepped out, wiping grease off my hands, and saw her marching across the cul-de-sac, clipboard in hand, pointing toward my house like she was leading an investigation. 2 other HOA members followed her like ducklings, Mr. Porter, the treasurer, and a quiet woman named Elaine who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "What now, Linda?" I called out, trying to keep my tone civil. She turned, that smug smile plastered on her face. "Mark," she said sweetly, "we've received multiple complaints about noise and possible violations related to your property." I frowned. "Noise? Violations? We're just doing regular maintenance." She tapped her pen against her clipboard. "Well, the HOA handbook clearly states that exterior work requires prior approval. You didn't file any notice." I bit back the urge to laugh. I was fixing a fan, not building a skyscraper. Before I could respond, Lisa came out, wiping her hands on a towel. "Linda, seriously? He's in the garage. What's the problem?" But Karen was already peering over her sunglasses toward the window of our house, toward the upstairs bathroom window. "I've also received reports of inappropriate behavior," she said sharply. My heart skipped. "Excuse me?" I asked, stepping closer. "What the hell are you talking about?" She sniffed, clearly enjoying herself. "One of the neighbors mentioned seeing a young woman, your daughter, I presume, standing by the upstairs window, unclothed. That's indecent exposure, Mark." For a second, I was too stunned to speak. Then anger hit me like a punch to the chest. "You're saying my daughter, in her own home, taking a shower, is committing a crime?" She smirked, flipping through her papers. "If she's visible to the street, technically nothing." Lisa snapped. "You've lost your mind, Linda. She's 16. What kind of person are you to even say that?" Karen pursed her lips. "The kind of person who enforces the rules. That should have been the end of it. We could have yelled, slammed doors, gone back to pretending to coexist. But no. Karen wasn't done. About an hour later, while Lisa was on the phone with her sister and I was still in the garage, I heard the scream. It wasn't the kind of scream you mistake for play, it was sharp, terrified, real. I dropped my tools and ran inside, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Lisa was right behind me. The sound was coming from upstairs, from Emily's bathroom. I'll never forget that sight for as long as I live. The bathroom door was half open, steam rolling out, and standing there, inside the bathroom, was Karen. She had a death grip on a towel-wrapped Emily, who was dripping wet, terrified, and sobbing. "You can't just barge into people's homes," I roared, shoving the door open fully. "What the hell are you doing?" Karen turned, eyes wild, yelling something about protecting the neighborhood's decency. I saw red. I lunged forward, grabbed her arm, and pulled her off my daughter so hard she stumbled back against the wall. Lisa rushed to Emily, wrapping her in a fresh towel, while I stood between them and Karen, shaking with rage. "Get out," I said, voice low and dangerous. "Now." She pointed that clipboard like it was a weapon. "You'll regret putting your hands on me, Mark. I'm reporting this to the board. You can't assault an HOA official. You broke into my house." I snapped. "You laid hands on my daughter." Her face twisted into a sneer. "You should have raised her better." That was it. I've had plenty of moments in my life where I lost my temper, but this was different. I took a deep breath, stepped aside, and pointed toward the door. "Out. Before I call the cops." She scoffed, straightened her blouse, and stormed past me like she still had authority. The moment she left, Emily collapsed in Lisa's arms, shaking. She came in," Emily stammered between sobs. "She said she saw me through the window and wanted to check if I was, oh my God, Dad, she grabbed me. I felt something inside me break. No father ever wants to hear those words. I called the police right then, hands trembling. The dispatcher asked if the intruder was still in the house. I said no, but I wanted an officer here now. What I didn't tell her, what I couldn't, was that my brother-in-law, James, was a police officer. Not just any officer, but the new police chief of our county. He and I weren't close, but I knew one thing: when he heard what had happened, there'd be hell to pay. Within 15 minutes, 2 patrol cars pulled up outside. The flashing lights drew every curtain open in the neighborhood. Karen was standing on her porch, arms crossed, pretending to be the victim already. I could see her talking animatedly to one of the officers as they got out, probably spinning her usual lies about how she was just doing her duty. When I explained what had happened, how she'd entered my home uninvited, assaulted my daughter, and accused her of indecency, the officers exchanged glances. One of them, Officer Reed, asked, "Did she physically touch your daughter?" I nodded sharply. "Dragged her right out of the shower." He scribbled notes, jaw tightening. "We'll need to get statements from all of you." Lisa was holding Emily, still shaking, wrapped in a blanket. My wife looked at me, eyes red. "Mark, please, don't do anything stupid." I nodded, but inside I was boiling. Karen strutted over, pretending to look composed. "Officer," she said, "these people are making baseless accusations. I was conducting an inspection. I had every right to. You entered their private residence without consent." Reed cut her off. "That's trespassing, ma'am." Her smile faltered. "It was an emergency." You thought wrong," he said firmly. But then, just when I thought justice might actually happen right then and there, one of the officers leaned in and whispered something to the other. They looked at Karen, then at me, and suddenly their tone softened. "We'll file a report," Reed said carefully, "but we'll let the HOA settle the dispute for now." "The HOA?" I exploded. "She broke into my house and assaulted my kid. You think the damn HOA should handle that?" The other officer gave me a tight-lipped look. "Sir, please calm down. You can file a complaint through the proper channels." It hit me like a slap. They weren't going to do anything. Not tonight. Not unless someone higher up made them. That's when I picked up my phone and called James. "Chief, it's Mark," I said, voice shaking. "I need you here. It's about Emily." He didn't ask for details, he just said, "On my way." Within 20 minutes, a black SUV rolled up, lights flashing. When James stepped out, the entire street went silent. Karen's face paled when she recognized him. Everyone in Oakwood knew who he was. He was calm, composed, but there was something dangerous in his eyes. "Mark," he said quietly, "start from the beginning." I told him everything, every word, every action, every disgusting accusation. He listened without interrupting, jaw tightening with every detail. When I finished, he turned to Karen. "Is that true?" he asked. She lifted her chin. "That man is lying. His daughter exposed herself publicly. I was ensuring community standards were upheld." The air seemed to crackle with tension. James took a slow step toward her. "So, you entered a private home. Without permission. And physically touched a minor. That about right?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "Ma'am," he continued, "that's trespassing, assault, and unlawful restraint. You're under arrest." The look on her face was priceless, shock, indignation, and disbelief all rolled into one. "You can't do that. I'm the HOA president." "You're a criminal right now," James said flatly. "Turn around." He motioned to the officers, who hesitated for a second until he snapped, "Now." They moved. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists, and the gasps from nearby neighbors were audible. For the first time, the Queen of Oakwood Estates looked small, just another person caught abusing power. As they led her to the cruiser, she shouted over her shoulder, "This isn't over. The board will hear about this." James glanced at me, eyes dark. "Oh, I'm counting on it," he muttered. "Because we're not stopping with you." And that was the moment I realized, this wasn't just about one woman anymore. It was about every single person who let her do what she did, every board member who turned a blind eye, every neighbor who whispered but stayed silent. My family's nightmare had just begun, but for the first time, I knew justice was coming. That night, after Karen was taken away, our house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a crime scene that had been cleaned up too quickly. The air was heavy with silence. Emily sat curled up on the couch, wearing one of Lisa's oversized sweatshirts, her hair still damp. Lisa sat beside her, rubbing her back, whispering words that were meant to comfort but couldn't undo what had happened. I stood near the window, staring at the flashing lights fading into the distance, trying to process everything. My heart was still racing, my mind running in 100 directions at once. How could someone like Karen have that much control over a neighborhood? And how many people had she intimidated before us? James stayed behind after his officers left, standing in my kitchen, filling out paperwork with that same stoic look he always had when something made him angry but he didn't want to show it. "She's booked," he said after a while. "We'll process her in the morning. There'll be a hearing soon enough." I nodded, but my voice came out low, almost hollow. "You think the HOA will try to defend her?" James let out a humorless chuckle. "Oh, they'll try. But once they realize there's video evidence, that'll change." I frowned. "Video evidence?" He pointed toward the window. "Mark, there's a security camera on your garage, right? The one facing the driveway?" My heart jumped. "Yeah, why?" "When I pulled up, I saw the angle. It probably caught her entering your house." I blinked, stunned that I hadn't even thought of it. In all the chaos, I'd forgotten I'd installed those cameras after a series of car break-ins last year. Without another word, I rushed to my office, powered up the monitor, and pulled the footage from that day. The screen came to life with a grainy black and white feed. The timestamp read 3:42 p.m. I fast-forwarded until I saw her, Karen, marching right up our driveway, clipboard in hand, looking around like she was casing the place. She tried the front door first, found it locked, then walked around the side gate toward the backyard. The camera didn't reach that far, but I knew where she went next, the back door that Lisa sometimes left unlocked when she was doing laundry. My hands shook as I watched. "There," I muttered, pausing the frame. "There's your proof." James leaned in, his expression unreadable. "Good. That's trespassing without a doubt. The DA will have a field day with this." But even with that sense of relief, something still gnawed at me. "She didn't act alone," I said. "She had backup. The HOA board's been covering for her for years. Someone told her about Emily being in the shower. Someone knew." James nodded slowly. "You're probably right. But we'll get there. Step by step." After he left, I sat on the couch beside Lisa. She was holding Emily, who'd finally dozed off, exhausted from crying. "She's traumatized," Lisa whispered. "Mark, she won't even go upstairs. She says she can still feel that woman's hands on her." My stomach twisted. "She'll never have to see her again," I promised. "Not after tonight." But deep down, I wasn't so sure. People like Karen always found a way to slither back. The next morning, the HOA sent out an email to every homeowner. Subject line, Community Incident Clarification. I read it out loud, my jaw tightening with every word. "Dear Oakwood residents, yesterday, an unfortunate misunderstanding occurred involving one of our board members, Linda Harris, and the Lewis family. We urge everyone not to jump to conclusions until all facts are reviewed. The HOA board will hold a special meeting this Friday to address the situation and ensure our community remains harmonious and respectful. Thank you for your cooperation. Sincerely, the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association." Lisa was furious. "Misunderstanding? She assaulted our daughter." I slammed the laptop shut. "They're circling the wagons." That was the moment I realized how deep this went. Karen wasn't just one bad apple, she was the face of a corrupt little empire, a system that let people like her bully everyone else under the guise of rules. Well, that system had just picked the wrong family to mess with. By Wednesday, the story had already started to spread beyond Oakwood. Someone must have recorded the arrest because clips were floating around social media. HOA president arrested for assaulting teen, the headlines were everywhere. Reporters even showed up at the subdivision entrance. Some of the neighbors avoided eye contact, others whispered their approval when they thought no one was listening. For the first time, Karen wasn't untouchable. But that didn't mean we were safe. On Thursday, I got a knock on my door. It was a man in a gray suit, holding a leather briefcase and an expression that screamed, "Lawyer." "Mr. Lewis," he said smoothly. "I represent the Oakwood Estates HOA. I'd like to discuss a possible settlement." My blood ran cold. Settlement? For what? "For the distress caused by the misunderstanding," he said, as if reading from a script. "If your family retracts certain statements and agrees not to pursue charges, the HOA is prepared to offer a financial resolution." I just stared at him. "You mean you want to pay us to stay quiet?" He smiled faintly. "Let's call it conflict de-escalation." Lisa came to the door then, her expression fierce. "You can tell your board that no amount of money will make this go away." He shrugged. "That's unfortunate. Then I must inform you that the HOA will be reviewing your compliance with several community guidelines. There may be fines involved." "Get off my porch," I said, stepping closer. He hesitated just long enough to smirk before turning and walking back to his car. Lisa shut the door and looked at me. "Mark, they're threatening us." "Let them," I said. "We're not backing down." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room, the only sound the quiet hum of the fridge. I was replaying the last few days in my mind, every word, every detail. My phone buzzed. It was James. "You up?" his text read. I replied yes, and within minutes he called. "Mark," he said, his voice low. "Thought you should know, the HOA's attorney called the department. They're claiming Karen was on official business, trying to get the charges dropped." My fists clenched. And the DA's not buying it. But the board's pushing hard. I'm launching a full investigation. The next morning, the police were back, this time with a warrant. They collected the footage from my cameras, took statements, and confirmed what we already knew. But what shocked me most was when one of the officers, Reed again, pulled me aside. "Mr. Lewis," he said quietly, "I shouldn't be telling you this, but one of our investigators found something interesting. Karen wasn't the only one with access to HOA member information. The board's vice president, Porter, was sending her personal data, photos, schedules, addresses. We think he's been helping her spy on residents." I felt sick. "Jesus Christ," I muttered. "Why? Power, I guess. Some people like feeling untouchable." That Friday, the HOA meeting was held in the community center. Normally, only a few people showed up, but that night it was packed. Word had gotten out. Lisa didn't want to go, she thought it would upset Emily, but I had to be there. I needed to look those people in the eyes. When I walked in, the tension was thick enough to choke on. The remaining board members sat at the front table, Porter, Elaine, and a smug-looking secretary named Vivian. Porter tapped the microphone. "We're here to discuss the unfortunate situation involving our former president, Linda Harris," he began. "The board is reviewing appropriate measures, former." I cut in. "So you removed her?" He glared at me. "She resigned pending investigation." "Resigned?" I laughed bitterly. "That woman should be in prison." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Porter cleared his throat. "Mr. Lewis, please, this is a community meeting, not a courtroom." I stepped forward. "Then maybe it's time it became one. Because I've got evidence, video, witnesses, and a police report, that proves your president committed a crime on my property. And I have every reason to believe you all knew about her behavior long before this happened." The room went silent. Porter's face reddened. "That's a serious accusation." "So's breaking into a house and assaulting a minor," I shot back. "What kind of board lets that happen?" Before he could respond, a voice from the back called out, "He's right." It was Mrs. Donnelly, our elderly neighbor. "Karen's been harassing people for years. She fined me because my granddaughter left chalk drawings on the sidewalk." Others began speaking up, one after another, stories of intimidation, unfair fines, even threats of foreclosure. The board members looked panicked. They weren't used to losing control. And then, as if on cue, the doors at the back opened. James walked in, flanked by two uniformed officers. The crowd hushed instantly. Porter tried to stand, but James's stare froze him in place. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "As of this evening, the Oakwood Estates HOA board is under investigation for obstruction of justice and misuse of authority." Gasps filled the room. "Mr. Porter, Mrs. Vivian, you are hereby ordered to surrender all association records immediately." Porter sputtered, "You can't just barge in here." "Actually," James said, pulling out a folded document, "I can. Search warrant. Signed by Judge Wilkins this morning." He handed it to the officers, who began seizing laptops, folders, and binders from the table. Elaine stood frozen, tears in her eyes. I didn't know, she whispered. James gave her a brief nod. Then you've got nothing to worry about. As the officers moved through the room, neighbors began clapping. The noise grew louder, cheers echoing through the hall. For the first time, the power had shifted. The people had finally had enough. Afterward, James and I stood outside under the streetlights. He exhaled slowly. It's bigger than we thought, Mark. Financial fraud, data leaks, intimidation. Karen was the face, but they were all in on it. I rubbed a hand over my face. What happens now? We take them down. One by one. But I'll need your help. You and Lisa, your testimony's key. I nodded, the weight of everything settling in. You'll have it. As he left, I looked back at the dark community hall. For years, that place had symbolized control and fear. Tonight, it symbolized something else, justice finally waking up. When I got home, Lisa was waiting at the door. How'd it go? She asked softly. I smiled for the first time in days. It's over, for now. But it's going to get uglier before it gets better. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. We'll face it together. Emily appeared at the top of the stairs, clutching her blanket. Dad, she whispered. Is she gone? I walked up and hugged her tightly. Yeah, sweetheart. She's gone. And she's never coming back. That night, for the first time in a long while, I slept without fear. The next few days felt like living in the calm before a storm. The kind of calm that isn't peaceful, just silent, heavy, waiting for something to explode. Even with Karen behind bars and the board under investigation, Oakwood Estates didn't rest easy. Some neighbors smiled at us with newfound respect, others avoided eye contact entirely. You could tell who'd been on Karen's side by the way they'd hurry inside whenever I walked past. For years, she'd ruled this neighborhood with fear, and people didn't shake that kind of conditioning overnight. Lisa tried to get things back to normal. She cleaned the house obsessively, cooked dinners none of us really had the appetite for, and made sure Emily had therapy sessions set up with a trauma counselor the department recommended. Emily went, but she barely spoke those first few visits. I'd hear her crying at night, whispering that she didn't feel safe. It broke me in ways I can't describe. I wanted to protect her, fix everything, make the nightmare disappear, but the truth was, the scars Karen left weren't the kind that healed quickly. James came by almost every day that week. He'd drop off updates, paperwork, sometimes just coffee. His calm, steady presence was the only thing keeping me from losing it completely. One morning, as we sat on the porch watching the sunrise, he said quietly, Mark, you know this isn't just about Karen anymore. The deeper we dig, the more rot we're finding. I turned to him. How bad is it? He sighed. Bad. Financial records show thousands of dollars unaccounted for, money from resident fees that just disappeared. They've been overcharging homeowners, funneling funds into private accounts. It's a full-blown racket. I let out a low whistle. So the whole HOA was dirty. He nodded. Pretty much. And your friend Porter? He's been cooperating, but only because he's trying to save himself. He claims Karen was the ringleader, but I think he's hiding something. I frowned. Hiding what? James looked toward the rows of houses, all lined up neat and proper, as if the world here could never be ugly. Connections, maybe. There's chatter about a developer who's been paying off the board for years. They want to rezone part of the neighborhood for commercial use. Karen's power wasn't just about fines and fences, it was about money. That made sense. Karen never did anything without personal gain. She loved control, but she also loved comfort, the latest SUV, endless renovations, HOA dinners at expensive restaurants that somehow got charged to the community budget. It was all adding up now. "So what happens next?" I asked. James straightened. "We'll be holding a public hearing. Everything comes out. I want residents there, statements, evidence, the whole picture. You up for that?" I looked at him, then at the house behind me where Lisa and Emily were finally sleeping peacefully. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'm up for it." The next week, the entire county knew about Oakwood Estates. News vans parked along the entrance road. Reporters interviewed neighbors, cameras flashed, headlines screamed HOA corruption scandal, president arrested, board under investigation. I never thought our quiet little street would end up on the evening news, but there we were, caught in a storm of attention we never asked for. Lisa hated it. She closed the blinds and kept Emily off social media. I didn't blame her. The internet could twist any story into something cruel. Then came Friday, the day of the hearing. It was held at the courthouse downtown, a far cry from the neatly trimmed lawns of Oakwood. The room was packed, reporters, residents, lawyers, and a handful of people from the county government. Karen sat at the defense table in a beige jumpsuit, her hair tied back, her usual arrogance replaced by a brittle sort of fury. When she saw me walk in, she actually smirked, like she still thought she could win. The prosecutor opened by laying out the facts: unlawful entry, assault on a minor, conspiracy, embezzlement. As he spoke, I could see Karen's facade cracking piece by piece. But what really hit her was when they started showing the footage, my security camera, the body cam video from the arrest, and statements from multiple neighbors confirming her pattern of harassment. It wasn't just about that one day anymore. It was about years of abuse under her so-called leadership. When it was my turn to testify, I stood, palms sweating. I'd been in plenty of tough situations in my life, but nothing compared to standing in that courtroom with my daughter's pain hanging in the air. I told them everything, from the first time Karen complained about our Christmas lights to the moment I found her in my bathroom. The prosecutor asked, "Mr. Lewis, how did this incident affect your family?" I swallowed hard. "It broke something in us," I said. "My daughter's 16. She should be thinking about prom, not therapy. My wife hasn't slept through the night since. And I can't walk into my own house without wondering what kind of people we trusted to live around us." When I finished, Lisa squeezed my hand, tears streaming down her face. Karen wouldn't look at me. She kept her gaze fixed on the table, jaw tight. I didn't care if she felt ashamed, she deserved to. The hearing stretched on for hours. Witness after witness came forward, neighbors who'd been bullied, fined, and humiliated. One woman said Karen had threatened to have her evicted because her husband parked a work truck outside. Another admitted she'd been too scared to report Karen for harassment because the board always backed her. Piece by piece, the image of Oakwood Estates' perfect little paradise shattered for everyone to see. By the time it was over, the judge ruled there was enough evidence to proceed with full criminal charges against Karen and several board members. Porter and Vivian were both arrested that same afternoon. Elaine was spared. Turns out she'd been keeping a secret journal documenting everything Karen did. Her notes became key evidence. He sent an officer to pick up the letter for evidence, but I could tell by his tone he was worried too. "Could be someone loyal to the board," he said. "Or someone connected to the money trail." "What do I do?" I asked. "You stay alert," he replied. "And you let me handle the rest." That night, I checked the locks 3 times. Installed more cameras. Even bought a motion-activated light for the backyard. Lisa didn't argue, she just sat with Emily, holding her close. I'd never seen her that scared. Not even after the incident. "Mark," she whispered, "what if it never ends?" I pulled her into my arms. Then we fight until it does. Days turned into weeks. Karen's case dominated local news. The HOA was officially dissolved under state order. Residents held emergency meetings to form a new, temporary association run by volunteers. For once, people actually listened to each other. The old fear was gone, replaced by something new, unity. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Then, one evening, just as I was locking up for the night, there was another knock on the door. This time it wasn't a lawyer, it was Elaine. She looked nervous, holding a folder. "I shouldn't even have this," she said quietly. "But you need to see it." Inside were copies of emails between Karen and a man named Richard Harlan, a real estate developer from downtown. The messages talked about rezoning Oakwoods parkland for commercial development, shopping complexes, offices. Karen had been promised a cut of the profits if she helped push the vote through the HOA. "This is what they were hiding," Elaine whispered. She wasn't just drunk on power. She was being paid to keep us in line. I stared at the papers, feeling that same old anger rise again. "You did the right thing bringing this to me," I said. She nodded, eyes brimming with tears. "I just want to make it right." I scanned the documents again and saw one more thing that chilled me: the developer had connections to the county zoning board. That meant there were people in government who might have looked the other way. I called James immediately and sent him photos of the emails. He called back 5 minutes later, his voice grim. "Mark, this just blew the case wide open." By the next morning, detectives were raiding Harlan's offices downtown. They found accounting records matching payments made to Karen and several others. It was bigger than anyone had guessed, a web of corruption stretching beyond Oakwood. Local news went wild. Suburban HOA scandal uncovers countywide bribery scheme. It was everywhere. For once, truth was louder than lies. Through it all, I tried to focus on Emily. Therapy was helping. She started drawing again, something she hadn't done since before the incident. One evening, she showed me a sketch of our house, but instead of perfect hedges and fences, she drew open fields and sunlight. "I like it better this way," she said softly. I smiled, my throat tight. "Me too, kiddo." When the final trial came around 3 months later, Oakwood Estates looked different. The lawns weren't as perfect, the fences not all matching, but the people smiled more. The community center, once a symbol of Karen's control, now hosted bake sales and game nights. We'd taken our neighborhood back. Karen was sentenced to 10 years in prison for assault, trespassing, and conspiracy. Porter and Vivian got lesser sentences after pleading guilty. The developer faced federal charges. When the judge read the verdict, Karen's expression was unreadable. She didn't cry, didn't scream, she just looked defeated. For someone who'd built her identity on power, losing it all must have felt worse than any punishment. After the sentencing, reporters tried to get statements. I declined. I wasn't interested in fame or sympathy. I just wanted peace. Lisa and I walked out of the courthouse hand in hand. The sky was clear, and for the first time in months, the world didn't feel so heavy. James caught up with us outside. "You did good," he said quietly. "All of you." I nodded. "Couldn't have done it without you." He smiled faintly. "Just doing my job." But I could tell he meant more than that. That night, we sat on the porch watching the sunset. Emily came out, holding 3 mugs of cocoa. "For us," she said shyly. Lisa laughed. "You're spoiling us, sweetheart." Emily smiled, a real one this time, and I realized we were finally healing. As the last light faded, I looked around at the quiet street, the same one that had once felt like a prison. Now it felt like home again. "You know," I said softly, I used to think rules kept a community safe. Turns out, it's people who do that. The right ones. Lisa nodded. And we've got some of those now. For a long while, none of us spoke. We didn't need to. The nightmare was over. The monsters had been unmasked. And for the first time in a long time, I believed we were truly free. I wish I could say everything went back to normal after the trial. That justice came down like a hammer, that we all moved on and never looked back. But life doesn't work that cleanly. The cracks left behind by fear don't just seal themselves because a judge says it's over. For a few months, things were quiet. Oakwood Estates transformed into something resembling a real neighborhood again. Without the HOA breathing down everyone's necks, people actually talked to each other. Kids played outside until dark, dogs barked without anyone getting a warning letter, and for the first time, we all started to remember what community actually meant. Lisa joined a committee that was planning to rebuild the neighborhood park, the same one Karen had secretly planned to sell. Emily started smiling again, even laughing sometimes. She was still in therapy, but she was getting stronger. Every week, she'd bring home a new sketch, brighter than the last. But peace is fragile. And sometimes, the past doesn't let go. It started with small things. One night, I came home from work and noticed the side gate was open. I knew I'd locked it that morning. The next day, I found one of our security cameras tilted down, the lens scratched. Lisa brushed it off at first, maybe a raccoon, she said, but I knew better. My instincts told me someone had been there. Then came the letters. The first one was typed, no return address, just like before. It said, liars never rest easy. The second came a week later, some people don't forget. I reported it, of course. James sent a patrol to drive by more often, but he was skeptical. Probably some idiot trying to scare you, he said. You've been in the news. People love to stir things up. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But the feeling in my gut told me otherwise. A few days later, Lisa came running into the house, pale as a ghost. Mark, she gasped, come outside. I followed her to the front yard. Spray painted across our garage door, in thick black letters, were the words, traitors. The sight made my blood run cold. It wasn't random vandalism. Someone wanted to send a message. We called the police, and they documented it, took photos, filed a report. But no one saw anything. No cameras caught a clear face. The only thing they found were faint tire marks near the curb. Lisa was shaking. What if it's someone from the old HOA? One of Karen's friends? I didn't have an answer. A few of Karen's die-hard supporters had stayed quiet after the trial, but I knew resentment still simmered under the surface. People like that didn't just fade away, they waited, plotted, and struck when you least expected it. That night, I slept on the couch, shotgun within reach. Every noise made me jump. The house creaked, the wind rustled the trees, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. The next morning, I got a call from James. We found something, he said. One of Karen's old associates, her cousin, actually, posted bail for her appeal hearing. My chest tightened. She's out? Temporarily, he said carefully. Under supervision. But you need to be careful. She's not allowed near you or your family. I hung up, staring at the floor. Karen. Out. The name itself made my skin crawl. I didn't tell Lisa right away, I didn't want to panic her, but when she saw the look on my face that night, she knew. She's out, isn't she? She whispered. I nodded. For now. But she's not supposed to come near us. Lisa's hand trembled as she covered her mouth. Mark, what if she blames us for everything? What if, "She can't touch us," I said firmly. "Not anymore." But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. Over the next week, weird things kept happening. Packages disappeared from our porch. Our trash cans were knocked over. The feeling of being watched grew stronger every day. Emily, who had finally started sleeping upstairs again, came into our room one night crying. "Dad," she whispered, "I saw someone outside my window." I bolted up, grabbed my flashlight, and ran outside. Nothing. Just the rustle of leaves and the chirp of crickets. But the grass beneath her window was trampled, and there were fresh footprints in the dirt. That was the final straw. I called James again. He came over personally this time, eyes dark. "We'll increase patrols," he said. "But Mark, don't do anything stupid. Let us handle it." "I'm not waiting for her to hurt my family again," I snapped. "Not this time." James put a hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone, brother. Just keep your head. We'll catch whoever's doing this." The next day, Lisa insisted we install new cameras, high-resolution ones with night vision. I spent the whole afternoon setting them up. Every corner of the house, every blind spot. I wasn't taking chances. That night, just after midnight, the motion alert went off. I grabbed my phone, heart pounding. The live feed showed movement near the driveway, just a shadow at first. Then a figure stepped into the light. A woman. Short blonde hair. Hoodie pulled low. Karen. I froze, staring at the screen. She looked right at the camera, smiled, a twisted, cold smile, and then turned, walking toward the gate. "Lisa!" I shouted, running to the window. By the time I got outside, she was gone. Just like that. I called James immediately, sent him the footage. He was furious. "That's a violation of her bail terms," he said. "We'll issue a warrant. She won't get far." They arrested her the next morning. She'd cut off her ankle monitor and driven into town. When they found her, she was in a motel outside the county line, her car full of stolen HOA files, photos of residents, including us, and maps of Oakwood estates with notes scribbled across them. She'd been planning something. But even with her back in custody, the fear didn't fade. Because those files? They showed there were still others helping her. Notes about supporters, loyal residents, even lists of people she claimed owed her favors. Karen might have been the ringleader, but her web of influence was still alive. For the next few weeks, James's department worked around the clock. They raided homes, seized computers, uncovered evidence of blackmail and threats going back years. The scale of it was staggering. The HOA had been more like a cult, one built on control, fear, and power. Through it all, Lisa stood strong. Emily too. My wife had this quiet resilience I never fully appreciated until then. Every time the news played another update, every time I started doubting our safety, she'd say, "We've already survived the worst. We'll survive this too." And she was right. Eventually, the arrests stopped. The letters stopped. The nights grew peaceful again. The fear, while never fully gone, dulled into something manageable. Oakwood was finally free, not perfect, not untouched, but stronger. One evening, months later, we held a neighborhood barbecue. For the first time since we'd moved there, everyone came. Kids ran around laughing, adults talked without tension. I looked around and realized that maybe, just maybe, we'd turned a corner. Elaine came up to me, holding a glass of lemonade. "You know," she said with a faint smile, "if it wasn't for you and Lisa standing up to her, none of this would have changed." I shrugged. "We just did what we had to." "No," she said softly. "You did what was right. That's rarer than you think." That night, as the sun set over the street that had seen so much chaos, I sat on the porch with Lisa and Emily, watching the kids chase fireflies. For the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, peace that didn't feel borrowed. Still, a part of me knew the world would never be completely safe again. Once you've seen the kind of darkness people are capable of, you never forget it. But maybe that's what makes the light matter more. Lisa leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. "You think it's really over this time?" she asked. I looked out at our neighbors laughing, the faint smell of grilled food still in the air. "Yeah," I said quietly. "This time, I think it is." But as I said it, a flicker on the new security monitor inside caught my eye, a car slowing down at the end of the street. Windows tinted. Engine idling just a little too long. Then it drove off. I said nothing. I didn't want to ruin the moment. But inside, I promised myself one thing: if the past ever tried to come back for us again, I'd be ready. It's strange how life creeps back toward normal after chaos, even when part of you still waits for the next storm. A year had passed since Karen's final arrest, but the shadows of that night still hung in the corners of our home, like ghosts that refused to move on. Lisa and I tried to rebuild what was lost, piece by piece. The HOA board was dissolved permanently, replaced by a simple neighborhood committee that handled trash collection and safety patrols. No more rules about mailbox colors or grass height, just neighbors helping neighbors. It was what Oakwood Estates should have been all along. Emily, my little girl, had grown so much since that day. She was taller now, her confidence returning one smile at a time. She'd taken up track and art, spending hours sketching landscapes instead of locking herself away. Her therapist said she was finally letting go of the trauma. I wanted to believe it. Every now and then, though, I'd see the flicker of fear in her eyes, like when a car slowed near our house, or when someone knocked unexpectedly at the door. That part of her, that instinctive dread, mirrored my own. Because I felt it too. Lisa, bless her heart, did everything to keep the home warm. She planted sunflowers by the fence, painted the kitchen yellow, even started baking on weekends again. The smell of her cinnamon rolls filled the mornings, like a promise that life could be sweet again. And for a while, it really was. Until that morning. It was early, just before sunrise. The world outside was still gray and quiet. I was sitting at the dining table, sipping coffee and reviewing a few files from work, when the front door creaked. At first, I thought it was Lisa heading out for her morning jog, but then I saw her still asleep on the couch, a blanket draped over her shoulders. The creak came again. I rose silently, reaching for the handgun in the drawer. Old habits die hard. I moved toward the hallway, my pulse slow but steady. The front lock turned slightly, someone was trying to open it from the outside. Every instinct I had screamed danger. I stepped to the side of the doorway, gun raised, waiting. The knob twisted again, then stopped. Silence. Then a soft thud, like something being placed against the door. I yanked it open, gun drawn, empty porch. Just the faint rustle of wine through the trees. I scanned the yard, nothing. Then I looked down. A box sat at my feet. Small, plain, unmarked. Lisa stirred behind me. "Mark? What's going on?" "Stay back," I said quietly. I knelt, checked the box. No ticking, no wires, just tape sealing the lid. Slowly, I lifted the flap. Inside was a stack of old photographs. Of us. Me, Lisa, and Emily, some taken from far away, some from angles that suggested hidden cameras. My stomach turned. The last photo was of our house, taken the night Karen broke bail. And under that, a note. Typed. Lisa gasped when she saw it. "Oh my God. Mark," I called James immediately. Within 20 minutes, patrol cars lined our street. He examined the photos, his jaw tightening. "This isn't Karen's work," he said finally. "She's still in federal custody. Someone else had access to her files." The thought chilled me. You think one of her supporters is still out there? Could be. Or someone she manipulated before she went down. They dusted the box for prints, none. Ran the photos through facial recognition software, no leads. Whoever sent it knew what they were doing. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Every sound outside set me on edge again. The air felt heavier, like the calm before a storm I couldn't see. Lisa tried to reassure me. Maybe it's someone trying to scare us. Nothing more. But fear has a way of digging into you, making you question everything. A week passed, then another. No new threats. I began to hope it was over, just a cruel prank meant to rattle us. Until the night the power went out. It was around 9 p.m. We were watching TV when everything went black. Total silence. Then, faintly, through the dark, footsteps on the porch. I grabbed my flashlight and gun, motioning Lisa and Emily to the back of the house. My voice was calm but cold. "Stay in the pantry. Lock the door. Don't come out until I say." The beam of the flashlight cut through the living room, trembling slightly as I moved. The footsteps grew louder. Then, another sound. The faint click of metal on glass. Someone was at the window. I swung the light toward the noise, heart hammering. A face pressed against the glass for an instant, a man's face this time, pale, unshaven, eyes wild. Then he vanished into the dark. I rushed outside, but he was gone. Just the echo of footsteps fading into the night. James's team came again, combing the area. They found tire tracks leading into the woods behind the development. Same pattern as before, same vehicle type that had been seen months ago after Karen's arrest. James looked at me, expression grim. Looks like she wasn't working alone after all. We spent the next few weeks under surveillance. Patrol cars parked near our house every night, cameras watching every angle. The man never came back, but the message was clear: Karen's web had threads we hadn't cut yet. Eventually, they caught him. His name was Richard Nolan, one of the former HOA board's security contractors. He'd helped Karen enforce her rules before everything went down. When questioned, he broke fast. Claimed he'd been keeping watch for her, that he wanted revenge for what they did to her. They found hundreds of photos in his storage unit. Not just of us, of dozens of families from Oakwood. Files, letters, recordings. He'd kept the HOA's ghost alive long after it died. When James called to tell me they had him, I didn't feel relief at first. Just emptiness. It was finally over, but the cost had been everything peace should have meant. That night, I sat on the back porch watching the sky. The air smelled of rain. Lisa came out and sat beside me, wrapping her arm through mine. "He's in custody?" she asked. "Yeah. It's over. For real this time." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "You know what's crazy? I almost missed the days before we knew any of this. When the HOA was just annoying, not dangerous." I chuckled softly. Ignorance was bliss. We sat in silence for a while, the sound of frogs echoing across the pond behind the house. For the first time, the quiet didn't feel threatening. Just peaceful. A week later, a letter came in the mail, official this time, stamped from the court. The HOA of Oakwood Estates was formally dissolved. The property rights were returned to the residents. No more boards. No more power games. Just us, at last. At the next neighborhood gathering, I stood in front of everyone, old faces, new families, even a few who'd once feared us because of Karen's lies. I looked around and realized something. Despite everything, we'd built something real out of the wreckage. Lisa squeezed my hand. "Say something," she whispered. I took a deep breath. "When we first came here, I thought this neighborhood would be our quiet place," I said. "And for a while, it wasn't. We were scared, angry, divided. But what we've gone through, the fear, the fight, the loss, it reminded us what community really is. It's not rules or control. It's trust. And it's something no one can take from us again." Applause rippled through the crowd. Some people were crying. Even James, standing in the back with his uniform on, gave a small nod. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily ran up to me with her sketchbook. "Dad," she said proudly, "look what I drew." It was our house, bathed in golden light, surrounded by trees, with little stick figures of us smiling on the porch. I felt something warm in my chest. Not pride. Not relief. Something deeper. Something that said, "You made it through." That night, when the stars came out, Lisa and I sat on the porch swing, hand in hand, watching the soft glow of the streetlights. "Do you think she'll ever stop haunting us?" Lisa asked quietly. I thought for a long time before answering. "No," I said softly. "But maybe that's okay. Because remembering her reminds us how strong we became because of her." Lisa smiled faintly. "You and your poetic cop talk." "Hey, someone's got to give the movie speech," I said with a grin. She laughed, a real, unguarded laugh. The kind I hadn't heard in years. The crickets sang, the air cooled, and for once, the world felt still. Inside, the house was filled with light. Emily was humming upstairs, the smell of Lisa's candles floating through the air. And as I sat there, I realized the truth. The story wasn't about Karen anymore. It was about us, the people she couldn't break, no matter how hard she tried. Evil had come to our doorstep. It had torn through our peace, scarred our lives, and left marks we'd carry forever. But it hadn't won. Because in the end, we were still standing. And that, I decided, was the real victory.